So in high school, I was one of the top performers in my school. And I'm not saying this as like a kind of flex or something like that. Like I was like, first of all, a massive nerd. I like spent way too much time studying, investing in it. I was going hard with it. And second of all, it was not that difficult in high school because definitely in many high schools around the world, people don't take studying that seriously. So it was very, very easy to be exceptional in high school. It didn't take much effort. And, you know, of course, there were high performers in my high school, of course, but it was very easy to stand out just because of the nature of high school. But here's the thing. When I went into university, specifically engineering school, suddenly I went from like the top performer, one of the top guys, to literally just like an average student. Because basically when you go to university, especially when you go to like engineering university or law school or medical school or something, but especially just going to university, you get seriously humbled. Because in high school, like everyone has to go to high school, you know, it's a requirement of the law or whatever. But the people going to university are the people who choose to go to university, especially if you choose to sign up for engineering school. So these are the top performers. And suddenly I went from like one of the highest guys in high school, to like average. And so the point I'm trying to make here is, you know, I've been surrounded by so-called academic weapons my entire life, really high performers. And what I think an academic weapon is, I think an academic weapon, I hear this term all the time, you know, I didn't know what it was like a couple months ago, but I hear this term. At least to me, what an academic weapon is someone who can not only do really, really well academically, but someone who has the traits and is the type of person who can do well in other areas of life too. So he's not just like specialized, like an expert when it comes to studying medicine or something, but he's someone who is all-rounded. He can excel in other areas of his life. So I've spent a lot of time around academic weapons in my schooling, and I've done a lot of research online on the habits of the top students, and I've condensed it into what I think are the top 5 traits that all these high-performing students have, and I've tried to adopt these traits as well, and I'm going to share with you in this video what I found. Okay, so the first trait that I've noticed amongst these exceptionally academic people is they're very motivated, naturally motivated. Now, here's the thing. There is this, you know, narrative that goes on online where it's like, oh, you know, bro, motivation is overrated. We need discipline. Motivation may be here or not, but discipline is always here to stay. And I completely agree with that. I'll go into that later. But what motivation is, at least what I think, sure, discipline's good, but it would be better if we were motivated. Imagine if you were motivated every single day to study. Then you wouldn't even need discipline because you'd be motivated. So what I've realized about these top, you know, students is they're all naturally very, very motivated. And what motivation means is they have like a reason why they want to study. I'll go into this now, because what I've been learning recently is that there's actually different levels of motivation. So the motivation that most students have to study is kind of a motivation of fear. Like, so there's the deadline approaching, you know, they've got an exam in a month, their parents are going to get mad at them if they don't study. So it's a motivation of fear that pushes them to go study. If the exam is very, very far away, they're not studying, they're not caring about it. That's level 1 motivation. Level 2 motivation is extrinsic motivation. It's like things out there in the outside world. So for example, you want to get good grades. You want to impress the students in your class. You know, that was a big thing for me. I wanted to compete with all the students in my class. I wanted to get good grades to impress the girl in class that I had a crush on. I wanted to impress my parents. I wanted to impress my teachers. That's level 2 motivation. That's great. A lot of students have that as well. They want to get good grades. But the highest level of motivation that I've been learning about recently is what's called intrinsic motivation. This is a motivation that comes deep from within you. Like, okay, imagine an athlete. An athlete, for example, LeBron James, he wakes up at 4 a.m. every day. Not because he's trying to impress his parents, not because he's trying to, you know, impress his coach, not even because he's trying to win some games. Like, okay, yeah, he does want to win. He does have that motivation. I'm not saying don't have that motivation. But he also has this huge intrinsic motivation within him, a deep motivation to do well in his sport. So this is what the top students have. They have a deep, like, love of learning. That's the first thing. They love to learn. They're curious about the subjects they're learning. They are intrinsically motivation. But they also have a purpose for studying. They know that studying is not just to impress their parents. Studying is not just to impress their teachers. but maybe it's going to set them up for a beautiful career in the future. Maybe, learning these skills, learning how to learn will make them a lifelong learner, which they can use to learn skills in their life to become successful in any area that they want. I know what I saw is a lot of students are motivated by being able to set up their families in the future by working hard now. So the whole point of this intrinsic motivation, yes, one side of it is to learn to enjoy studying. I made a video how to enjoy studying, and I'm going to make other videos about motivation soon. But basically, the next level to it is finding your own reason why you want to study. So one aspect of it is finding curiosities within your subjects, finding areas of your subjects that you enjoy and you want to learn about. That's very, very important. Because look, being motivated by getting the grade is good and all, but that means you're going to hate the process. Like, if you're just studying to get good grades, it's going to be a painful process until you get your report card. And when you get your report card, it's only about 5 seconds of happiness. So if you're naturally motivated every single day to sit down and study, then not only is studying going to be enjoyable, but it's going to be less effort, less stress, because you don't need discipline to push yourself to sit down and study. Now, everyone needs to find their own motivation. That's also what I learned. So think about it, find your own motivation. But that's trait number 1 that I realized from the top students. Now, trait number 2, I said earlier that there's this narrative that goes around that motivation is overrated and discipline is more important. Now, trait number 2 of these top students, I want to say, is discipline. Because here's the thing. Sure, being motivated to study, having a deep purpose of why you want to study is great. Loving learning, loving studying is great as well. But there's 2 things. 1, you're not going to love every single subject you learn. I remember I had subjects that I hated. Like, there are some subjects in university that I did, like one I did last year called distributed systems. They're just so badly designed that they're very, very difficult to enjoy. So you are going to encounter boring assignments, boring teachers, boring subjects. That's the first thing. The second thing is every single day you're not going to be motivated to study. And this is where the whole narrative of discipline is more important than motivation comes from. It's because discipline matters on a day-to-day level. This is what I've realized. Basically, like, every single day you're not going to want to sit down and study. Some days you're going to feel so tired. You just want to go to sleep. No matter how much you love studying, you're going to want to sleep. There are going to be times of the day when you're going to want to sleep. And also, when you're developing your motivation for studying, you might not have the motivation yet, and you have to develop the motivation through practice. So you're going to need discipline in the beginning to sit yourself down and study. So it's true, these top students are naturally motivated and they need less discipline than the average person to study. But they still have discipline. All students have days when they don't want to study. All students have assignments they don't want to do. So discipline is the act of not feeling like doing something, but doing it anyway. Basically, they have this mindset of discipline, this mindset of they will turn up every single day. So they kind of see studying as like a job, where at least I've noticed at least 5 days a week, ideally more, 6 ideally, or 7. They will turn up every single day no matter how they feel. Some days they're not going to be studying well, they're going to be so slow typing their assignments. Some days things that they're studying are not going to click. They're going to feel like it's a waste of time. But they treat it like their job. They turn up every single day. Like I saw this video, Cristiano Ronaldo, the other day. He said this thing and it reminded me of this mindset. He said, it doesn't matter what you do. What matters is you do it. So what he's saying is okay, bro, it doesn't matter day to day. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be doing the perfect study techniques, the perfect routine every single day. Step 1, the most important thing, is that you simply turn up every single day. And that's what I realized discipline is. And this is what the top students do. They turn up every single day to study, no matter how they feel. So that's the second trait that I've noticed from these guys. Okay, and the third trait that I've noticed, this is an interesting one, is focus. So basically, what I've noticed about these top students is the majority of students, they will study all day. They'll study for 12 hours a day, 8 hours a day. And they do have that mindset of turning up from before. But what they do is they turn up and they think that just putting their attention towards their work is studying, is doing assignments, is doing homework. But what I've noticed about the top students is that they study kind of like a cheetah. So a cheetah, bursts very, very fast, attacks his food, and then rests for long periods of time. So this is precisely how the top students study, how they focus. They do very, very short bursts of very, very intense studying, and then they rest for extended periods of time. They rest intentionally. So they did studies on this, and they found that the top students study honestly for about like 3 to 4 hours every single day. I made a video like how I study 2 hours a day, which is true. I honestly didn't study much for most of my schooling life. And I talked a bit more about focus. But the idea is, the more intensely you focus, the more you need to rest, and the more your focus muscle gets drained, because focus is a muscle, basically. And so don't focus like a donkey, which is how most people focus, where they like focus all day with like little intensity of focus. If you focus very, very intensely, where literally, you glue your eyes onto the screen, you are 100% engaged in the task, all distractions are turned off. If you have your focus on maximum, you get the most work done, you get the most learning done, and you spend the least amount of time. And it's actually more effective to do about 3 to 4 hours of cheetah-like focus than it is to do 12 hours of donkey focus. And the other thing is, they're isolated from other people. So when you're with other people, when you're studying in a busy environment, you can't really reach those deep focus states required to learn super effectively and develop new skills. So the top students always isolate themselves when they do these deep focus sessions. But the other side of focus, just like a cheetah can run fast, a cheetah can also rest well. So, when you push yourself hard in the gym, you need to rest hard as well. You need to, have rest days, you need to rest. It's exactly the same with focus, because focus is a muscle, focus gets drained. And if you want to focus at full capacity, you also have to rest really, really hard. So basically the top students, they rest intentionally. So top students, they'll also sleep well. Now I always hear this all the time. It's like, oh bro, but my friend is a top student and he only sleeps for 4 hours a day. I guarantee either one, he is extremely inefficient, or two, it's only a temporary thing and he's going to burn out very, very soon. Because yes, it's possible to only sleep for 4 hours and get top grades. It's 100% possible. But the thing is, it's a lot rarer than you might think. Because here's the thing, a lot of successful entrepreneurs, for example, who are doing seriously difficult things in their careers, people who are like doing seriously difficult sports, a lot of this stuff that's like at the top of human peak performance, all of them are literally sleeping a lot. They are resting a lot. The top riders in the world will write for like 4 hours in the morning, and then they'll rest for the rest of the day. Or they'll focus for like 2 hours in the morning, rest for like 6 hours, and then do another 2 hours of writing. So the point is, peak performers are always doing a ton of rest. And the reality about studying, about school, this might seem a bit brutal, but at least also in my opinion, school is not that difficult. Doing school is not like writing a book. It's not like reaching peak performance, because everyone goes through schooling. Everyone can do well in school. So because of that logic, it is 100% possible to sleep for 4 hours and still do really, really well. But the point I'm trying to make here is, you can do it much more efficiently if you rest very, very hard, if you actually get a lot of sleep. Sleep 7 to 8 hours, whatever's required for you. I'm not a sleep expert, but the point is, what I've noticed, top students, most of them sleep a lot. They rest a lot. That's the third trait. The fourth trait that I've seen of top academic students, this is going to be a strange one, I thought about this, is they are patient. So what I've noticed is a sign of a low-performing student, someone who doesn't really understand how learning works, someone who doesn't really understand how studying works, is they get very, very frustrated when they don't understand something. They're trying to understand a concept, they get frustrated. They get a question wrong, they get frustrated. And when I see this, I realize that this person doesn't understand how learning works. Because the thing is, the process of learning, because the thing I realize is learning is a skill. Your ability to study, your ability to learn a subject is a skill. And as your ability to learn, as your skill in learning gets better, you understand the process of learning better. And you understand that learning requires effort, basically. It takes time. Often you will not understand a concept straight away. Often you will not understand, you will not be able to do a question straight away. Like often what would happen is in maths, I would, or in any subject, in any engineering subject I was doing, I would try to understand a concept and I would just not get it. It would make zero sense to me. I'd be like, this makes no sense. And I'd come back to it later and I'd try to understand it again. And I'd be like, this still makes no sense. This is such a difficult concept. I can't believe they put it in the textbook, in the subject. But then maybe I'd go to sleep or something like that. And then I'd wake up the next morning and try again to understand the concept. And suddenly it would make sense. It would like click in my brain. I would get like a light bulb moment and I would be like, oh my goodness, this makes perfect sense. So it's not because like somehow on that third try I tried to learn it in a different angle. It's because my brain needed those repetitions to understand the concepts. Maybe the first time I looked at it, because learning is all about making connections between things. When you learn a concept, you're like connecting different things that you understand and making connections between them. And when everything clicks together, that's when the concept makes sense. So maybe I would look at that concept first of all, and my brain would make some connections, some understandings, but it would still be kind of vague in my mind. Then I'd come back later and it would make some more connections. Then I'd go to sleep. And when you go to sleep, that's when your brain consolidates everything you've learned. So maybe I would go to sleep and my brain would consolidate all the concepts I was learning. And then I would wake up the next day and everything would make sense because while I was asleep, that's when my brain was doing the learning. So you do need to be patient when you learn stuff. You have to realize that you need repetition. You got to look at the concepts over and over again. Sometimes you have to step away from the concepts and come back. And also, you have to realize that failure is also a part of the process. So when you're learning, when you improve your ability to learn, your skill to learn, you realize that failure is inevitable in everything. You can't learn how to serve a tennis ball without missing the court thousands of times. You can't make a successful business without failing your product thousands of times. Same thing with this. You can't learn maths without getting 1,000 questions wrong. Every time you get a question wrong, your brain adds a connection. It makes a connection. It forms a pattern that helps you be able to understand the concept better later on. Because basically your brain is a pattern recognition machine. The more you expose it to concepts, the more you expose it to wrong answers, right answers, the more it will naturally recognize the patterns in the things you're learning and understand the concepts. So you have to realize that a lot of learning happens like under the hood. It's like you might feel like you're not learning, but as long as you're trying, as long as you're putting effort in, as long as you're testing yourself, you got to be patient. That's the trait I'm trying to mention here. And part of that is having a growth mindset. So basically what a growth mindset means is understanding that anything can be learned. So there was always something I liked about myself. Basically, I always believed that I could do anything that I put my mind to. I knew that if I really, really wanted to, I could become a professional fiction writer. I knew I could become a professional tennis player or whatever. If I just like put my mind to it, I knew I was capable of doing that. That's basically what a growth mindset is. It's understanding that, many students, they think they're not a maths person, they're not a physics person, they're not an English person. I used to think I wasn't an English person. Not like an Englishman or something, like a guy from England. I mean, I couldn't study English. And having a growth mindset, which is what the top students have, is they realize that any subject can be learnt with time, with patience, and they understand the learning process. So like I said, learning is a skill. The more you learn different subjects, the better your learning skill becomes, the better you can learn things in your own life. Because what life is, a lot of life is about learning about how you work, learning your own, how your brain works, learning how your body works, learning everything about life. And so if you can learn how to learn, then you'll succeed in your life. That's basically what self-improvement is. Okay, and the fifth trait here that I want to mention, this might seem like a bit of a weird one, but hear me out. Basically, trait number 5 is leadership. So the top students are leaders. And I don't mean leaders like they're in like a student committee or something. What I mean is they help their fellow students and they teach them. So there's been a lot of discussion recently, I've noticed, like in my Discord server and like online that I see, where people are like, they're in this kind of competition with their fellow classmates. They're like, I want to beat you, I want to be the best. And this can be a good motivation. Like I mentioned earlier in the motivation section, that's like an extrinsic motivation. It's like you want to beat your competition. Yeah, that can be good, like driving you. But the top students, that they did some research and they found that the top students are all actually more collaborative. They actually help each other, they teach each other. And I'll explain to you why actually teaching other students, helping other students, helps you more than it helps others. So basically, the natural step after self-improvement, when you solve a problem in your life, the next natural step is to actually help others solve that problem. So this is what the top students do. They basically teach concepts to their fellow students. So first of all, this is actually a principle of learning called the Feynman principle, where basically the best way to learn something is to teach it. Like when I make these YouTube videos, I'm literally teaching concepts that I'm learning in my life, and I'm realizing that these concepts are becoming much more ingrained into my head. So naturally, I love teaching. To be honest, like I always walk around the house and when I'm studying, I teach the concepts I'm learning to myself. I kind of like speak out loud the concepts I'm learning, and it helps me consolidate what I'm learning. And so because I naturally like to talk to myself like a crazy person and learn, I figured like, hey, why not turn on the camera and just post myself teaching myself? But the point I want to make is like, so like for example, throughout my schooling life, I've always had these top students around me. They would always help me with my subjects. They would teach me. And if you can teach someone a concept and get them to understand it, that means you truly understand the concept yourself. If you struggle to teach a concept to someone, it means you don't truly understand it yourself. And when you teach a concept to someone, you realize the gaps in your own knowledge. You know, you're teaching them like integration, and you're like, yeah, bro, integration is the sum of the infinitesimally small parts under the function, and you freeze and you realize you don't know what to say next. It means there's a gap there in your understanding. You found a gap, and you can fill in that gap. You can make a connection by learning what's missing. So you might think like, oh bro, I don't want to help my other students because they're gonna beat me. And you know, bro, the marks in the subject, bro, like if other students do well, then it's gonna bring the average up and I'm gonna do worse. Maybe that's true, but here's the thing. When you teach someone and you help them do better, you actually gain more by teaching someone. The person who's being taught actually learns less than the person who's teaching. So actually, by teaching someone else, you are like pushing yourself up. And you know, you could argue, okay, teach yourself on your own, like just sit at home and teach yourself. But when you teach other people, you get that feedback. They're like telling you what they understand. You're seeing, did they understand? You're helping them. And also, actually, basically one of the ways to get motivation is to have purpose. When you have purpose behind what you're doing, it gives you a lot of motivation. So purpose you can have is to help your students. When you have that purpose of helping your fellow students, it motivates you more to learn. Like I remember one of the best marks I ever got was like a subject called From the Solar System to the Cosmos. You know, it was a relatively simple subject, but I loved that subject so much that I just started helping everyone in my class. Like I was in the group chat, you know, answering questions. There was like a past paper without any answers. I wrote down worked solutions for it and I put it in the group chat, and people were like thanking me. They're like, oh, thanks, bro. You know, you're very, very helpful. And I was helping them, you know, maybe they were learning from what I was telling them, maybe. But I learned so much by teaching them that kind of stuff. And I was so motivated to learn because I was like, oh, I'm going to learn this stuff and I'm going to teach it to the guys in my class. So when you're motivated in that way to help other people, it gives you a purpose. And like I said, it gives you motivation when you have a purpose. So those are the top 5 traits that I've put together of an academic weapon. And by the way, if you want me to help you become an academic weapon and you want me to help you build a solid study habit and teach you how to build a study habit and keep it for the rest of your life, and you want me to accelerate that process for you, because maybe for your whole life you've wasted, you know, hundreds of hours, thousands of hours procrastinating, and I can help you solve that problem once and for all, check out the first link in the description. At least just check it out to see if you're interested. See you later.